Do you ever tune into the television or the radio? I do. In fact, every morning I watch the news, I watch the weather. Sometimes there are certain words that come up on the weather or the news that I want to pay attention to, like snow. I love snow. So those are the kinds of words that we're listening to when we're reading. Maybe if you're listening to a book on tape and you rewind it because you hear an interesting word. While I'm listening, I also like to listen for words maybe that are new to me as I'm reading. Reading gives me a chance to tune into interesting words that I encounter, and I learn new words. Even adults, we learn new words all the time. Sometimes I hear those words, sometimes I read them, sometimes I write it. As I'm going, I'm expanding my vocabulary, and yes, even adults can expand your vocabulary. So if you think that your vocabulary is as big as it's going to get, you are very incorrect. So this week, for the next week or two, we're going to be reading Frindle. So today in class, we read the first chapter called Nick. So your lesson today, we're going to read chapter 2. And I want you to tune in to interesting words, because tomorrow you're going to be using, and the rest of the week, you're going to be using the new book that you are getting from our book giveaway this week to tune into interesting words in what you are reading in your own book. Today, follow along. Remember, you can always stop and replay this at any time as our assignment, because your assignment is to choose 3 new vocabulary words that are interesting to you. 5th grade was different. That was the year to get ready for middle school. 5th grade meant passing classes. It meant no more morning recess. It meant real letter grades on your report cards. But most of all, it meant Mrs. Granger. There were about 150 kids in 5th grade. And there were 7 5th grade teachers. 2 math, 2 science, 2 social studies, but only 1 language arts teacher. In language arts, Mrs. Granger had a monopoly and a reputation. That word monopoly is really interesting to me. I think I'm going to write that down in my notebook. Oh, I wasn't prepared, was I? So I'm going to write that in my notebook, and I'm going to write Frindle. And we did chapter 1 this morning, so I'm going to say chapter 2. And our first word is going to be monopoly. I don't know what monopoly means. Well, we're going to keep reading. We're going to read on. So I wrote the word monopoly. We're going to read on, and then we'll see if I can figure it out. Okay. So she had a monopoly and a reputation. Mrs. Granger lived alone in a tiny little house in an older part of town. She drove an old pale blue car to school every morning. Rain or shine, snow or sleet, hail or wind. She had a perfect attendance record that stretched back farther than anyone could remember. Her hair was almost white, swept away from her face and up into something like a nest on the back of her head. Unlike some of the younger women teachers, she never wore pants to school. She had 2 skirt and jacket outfits, her gray uniform and her blue uniform, which she always wore over a white shirt with a little cameo pin at the neck. And Mrs. Granger was one of those people who never sweats. It had to be over 90 degrees before she even took off her jacket. She was small as teachers go. There were even some 5th graders who were taller, but Mrs. Granger seemed like a giant. It was her eyes that did it. They were dark gray, and if she turned them on full power, they could make you feel like a speck of dust. Her eyes would twinkle and laugh too, and kids said she would crack really funny jokes, but it wasn't the jokes that made her famous. Everyone was sure that Mrs. Granger had X-ray vision. Don't even think about chewing a piece of gum within 15 feet of her. If you did, Mrs. Granger would see you and catch you and make you stick the gum to a bright yellow index card. Then she would safety pin the card to the front of your shirt, and you'd have to wear it for the rest of the school day. After that, you had to take it home and have your mom or dad sign the card and bring it back to Mrs. Granger the next day. And it didn't matter to Mrs. Granger if you weren't in fifth grade, because the way she saw it, sooner or later, you would be. All the kids at Lincoln Elementary School knew that at the end of the line, 5th grade, Mrs. Granger would be the one grading their spelling tests and their reading tests, and worst of all, their vocabulary tests, week after week, month after month. Every language arts teacher in the world enjoys making kids use the dictionary. Check your spelling, check that definition, check those syllable breaks. Syllable. We haven't talked about that one. I think that's an interesting word. So we're going to write that down so we can define that as well. So right now we have monopoly and syllable. Maybe you saw some words that were interesting to you. You're going to add those. Mrs. Granger didn't just enjoy the dictionary. She loved the dictionary, almost worshipped it. Her weekly vocabulary list was 35 words long, sometimes longer. As if that wasn't bad enough, there was a word for the day on the blackboard every morning. If you gave yourself a day off and didn't write one down, write one down and look it up and learn the definition, sooner or later Mrs. Granger would find out. And then, just for you, there would be 2 words for the day for a whole week. Mrs. Granger kept a full set of 30 dictionaries on a shelf at the back of the room, but her pride and joy was one of those huge dictionaries with every word in the universe in it. The kind of book it takes 2 kids to carry. It sat on its own little table at the front of her classroom, sort of like the altar in the front of a church. Every graduate of Lincoln Elementary School for the past 35 years could remember standing at the table listening to Mrs. Granger's battle cry, "Look it up! That's why we have the dictionary!" Even before the school year started, when it was still the summer before 5th grade, for Nick and his friends, Mrs. Granger was already busy. Every parent of every new 5th grader got a letter from her. Nick's mom read part of it out loud during dinner one night in August. Every home is expected to have a good dictionary in it so that each student can do his or her homework properly. Good spelling and good grammar and good word skills are essential for every student. Clear thinking requires a command of the English language, and 5th grade is the ideal time for every girl and boy to acquire an expanded vocabulary. I'm going to stop right there. There are so many vocabulary words there. Just in Miss Granger's section that I can't decide. So I want you to reread this section from page 10. And you can read it to yourself. Give you just a minute to read. And now I want you to pick a 3rd vocabulary word. So you're going to pick the 3rd word. Then I want you to define it based on how it's used in this part of the text. We're going to stop there. So we are reading from pages, so that we have it in our book, page 6 to page 11. We're not going to read the full chapter, pages 6 to 11 in Frindle Chapter 2. You're going to pick the 3rd word, and I want each of these words to have a definition, and we will be talking about this Wednesday. This is your assignment for Tuesday. We'll be talking about it Wednesday. So excited about this book. I hope you are too. Frindle. I wonder what that is. Anyway, we'll read along and we'll find out. See you next time.